The Sunoco station at the corner of Route 220 and Painter Run Road in Bradford, Pennsylvania, was the kind of gas station that served as the last outpost of civilization before the road climbed into the Allegheny National Forest and the cell service died and the trees closed over the highway like a tunnel made of wood. It had 8 pumps, a convenience store that sold hunting licenses and night crawlers, and the kind of coffee that had been sitting on a burner since 5 a.m. and tasted like it knew what it had done, and a bathroom with a key attached to a wooden paddle so large that you couldn't put it in your pocket, which was the point, because the previous key had been stolen by a man who'd driven to Erie and mailed it back 6 weeks later with a note that said, "Sorry," and nothing else. Grady Clinch Harlow was inside paying for diesel at 4:40 on a Saturday afternoon in early November because the card reader at Pump 6 had been broken since September, and the cashier, a woman named Patsy, had taped a handwritten sign to it that said, "Card reader broke again. Pay inside. Sorry. God bless." Grady was 47 years old, 6'2", 280 pounds, and he'd spent the last 24 years of his life doing 2 things: operating heavy equipment and building roads. He was a heavy equipment operator and site foreman for Harlow Excavation, a company his father had started in 1978 and that Grady had taken over in 2011 when his father's back had finally told him what his wife had been telling him for years, which was that 63-year-old men shouldn't be operating excavators 12 hours a day. The company did road construction, site work, and utility installation across McKean, Potter, and Elk counties, the northern tier of Pennsylvania, where the mountains are steep and the soil is rocky and the weather tries to kill you for 5 months of the year, and the other 7 months, it just makes you uncomfortable. His beard was dark brown and silver, thick, reaching his sternum, and he kept a small turnbuckle, a miniature rigging turnbuckle, the kind used to tension guy wires, clipped to the bottom of his beard on a steel ring. His forearms were sleeved in ink. His left arm carried a massive excavator bucket rendered in photorealistic detail, the teeth biting into layered earth showing topsoil, clay, shale, and bedrock in cross-section, with a surveyor's transit and a grade stake worked into the foreground. His right arm was a road construction sleeve, a freshly paved 2-lane highway stretching from his wrist to his bicep, with road graders and pavers and dump trucks working the surface, surrounded by mountain ridgelines and pine trees that matched the Alleghenies, visible through every window in McKean County. His knuckles were tattooed in block letters, road on the left, gang on the right, because road construction crews call themselves gangs the same way railroad crews do, and Grady had been running a road gang since he was 23. He wore a black leather vest with the Northern Tier MC center patch, an excavator bucket breaking through a mountain ridge with a road emerging behind it, his Chaplin diamond, and a small surveyor's pin on his breast pocket that his father had worn every day of his working life. Subscribe to Asphalt Angels and hit that notification bell, because this story starts with a note on a gas station counter and 7 words that a girl had been practicing in her head for 45 minutes while a man waited in the car outside. The Northern Tier MC had been founded in 2012 by Grady and 5 other heavy equipment operators and road builders in McKean County, men who carved roads out of mountains for a living and rode motorcycles on them for pleasure. The club had grown to 19 members across McKean, Potter, and Elk counties, all of them men who moved earth, excavator operators, grader operators, paving crew, the men who built the roads that connected the small towns of northern Pennsylvania to each other and to the world outside the forest. The club's philosophy was borrowed from road building. You can't build a road without knowing where the ground is. Survey before you dig. Know what's under the surface before you break it. Grady was at the counter. Patsy was ringing up his diesel and a bag of beef jerky and a bottle of water. There were 3 other people in the store: a man in a camo jacket looking at the energy drinks, a woman in a Steelers hoodie buying cigarettes, and a girl. The girl was standing behind Grady in line. She was maybe 11 years old. She was wearing a pink jacket over a school uniform, plaid skirt, white blouse, and she was holding a bag of chips and a Gatorade. She was standing close to the counter. Not normal close. Pressed against it close. The closeness of someone who wants to be near the register, near the cashier, near the adult behind the counter who works there and isn't going anywhere. Grady didn't notice her at first. He was counting cash. He always paid for diesel in cash because his father had paid for diesel in cash, and some habits are inherited the way eye color is inherited, without choice or question. Patsy was making change. The transaction was ordinary. The girl put the chips and the Gatorade on the counter. She put her hand flat on the counter next to the items. Under her palm was a piece of paper, folded once, torn from a notebook, the kind of paper with blue lines and a red margin line that every school in America uses, and that every child in America has access to. She slid it across the counter toward Patsy. She didn't say anything. She looked at Patsy. She looked at the door. She looked back at Patsy. Patsy took the note. She opened it. In careful handwriting, the handwriting of a girl who had written these words before she left the car, who had torn the paper from a notebook in her backpack and written them with a pen she kept in her pencil case, and folded the note and held it in her fist for 45 minutes, while the man drove, and she waited for the moment when he would stop, and she would be inside, and he would be outside, and there would be a counter between them, were 7 words. Don't let him take me back to the car. If this story has touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe to Asphalt Angels. Because a girl wrote 7 words on a piece of notebook paper and slid it across a gas station counter. And those 7 words are the reason she's alive. Patsy read the note. Patsy was 58 years old. She'd worked at the Sunoco for 11 years. She'd seen shoplifters and drunks, and a man who'd tried to pay for gas with a check written on a napkin, and a woman who'd left a baby in a car seat on the counter and said, "I'll be right back," and came back 4 hours later. She had never seen a child slide a note across her counter that said, "Don't let him take me back to the car." But she'd imagined it. Every cashier in America has imagined it. The scenario, the training video, the what would you do. And when the moment arrived, Patsy did not hesitate. She did not look at the door. She did not look at the car. Door. Don't open it for anyone but me or door. Don't open it for anyone but me or the police. The girl walked to the bathroom. She took the key on the wooden paddle from the hook behind the counter. Patsy handed it to her without being asked. And she walked down the hall, and she went into the bathroom, and she locked the door, and the sound of that lock turning was the sound of a girl putting a door between herself and the parking lot for the first time in 6 days. Grady was still at the counter. He'd seen the note pass. He hadn't read it. He'd seen a piece of paper move from a girl's hand to a cashier's hand, and he'd seen the cashier's face change the way a gauge changes when the pressure spikes, the sudden rigid expression of a person processing information that requires immediate action. "What was that?" Grady said. Patsy handed him the note. Grady read 7 words, and the road builder's brain, the brain that surveyed ground before breaking it, that read soil conditions and slope angles and load-bearing capacities, read the terrain of those 7 words and understood immediately what was under the surface. A girl in a car with a man she needed to not go back to, a gas station bathroom with a lock, a parking lot outside with a vehicle that was about to leave or whose driver was about to come inside looking for a girl who wasn't coming out. "Which car?" Grady said. "I don't know." If you're watching this story, hit that hype button right now. It's free, takes 1 second, and helps these stories reach the people who need them. Now, back to the story. Grady walked to the front window, The lot had 7 vehicles, 3 at the pumps, 4 in the parking spaces. One of them contained a man who was waiting for a girl to come back with chips and a Gatorade, and who was going to notice, very soon, that she wasn't coming back. He texted the Northern Tier group chat, Sunoco, Route 220, and Painter Run. Girl passed a note to the cashier. Don't let him take me back to the car. She's locked in the bathroom. Drivers in the lot. Need brothers. Now. GPS pin. Stone responded first. Vice President, grader operator. 6 minutes. Then grade from Smethport. Then paver and dozer together from Bradford. Then auger from Mount Jewett. 5 riders. Patsy called 911 at 4:44 p.m. She read the note to the dispatcher. She described the girl, 11, pink jacket, school uniform. She said she didn't know which vehicle. The dispatcher said units were en route. McKean County Sheriff, 8 minutes. At 4:47, a man walked into the Sunoco. He was average height, average build, brown hair, khaki pants, a blue fleece jacket, the kind of man who looks like everyone and no one, the kind of man whose face doesn't register because it's designed not to register, because men who take children from places learn to look like the kind of men who belong in places. He walked to the counter. Did a girl come in here? My daughter. Pink jacket. She was getting snacks. Patsy looked at him. 11 years behind a gas station counter. 11 years of reading faces the way Grady read soil, for what's under the surface, for the cracks, for the places where the presentation doesn't match the pressure. This man's face was calm. His voice was calm. His eyes were not calm. His eyes were doing the math, the store, the aisles, the hallway to the bathroom, the exits, the calculation of a man whose timeline had just changed. Haven't seen her, Patsy said. She came in. I watched her come in. She was getting chips. Lots of people come in. I don't remember a girl. The man looked at the hallway. He looked at the bathroom door. He took a step toward it. Grady stepped into the hallway. 6'2", 280 pounds, leather vest, tattooed forearms, arms crossed. He didn't say anything. He stood in the hallway the way a Jersey barrier stands on a highway, concrete, immovable, positioned specifically to prevent passage in one direction. The man stopped. Excuse me, I need to check the bathroom. My daughter. Bathroom's occupied. I need to check. Bathroom's occupied. You can wait outside. The man's eyes changed. The calm cracked. Beneath the calm was something else. The rapid recalculation of a man whose plan had encountered an obstacle that wasn't supposed to be there. The look of someone who'd done this before and had never been stopped and was now standing in a convenience store hallway looking at 280 pounds of excavator operator and realizing that the math had changed. He turned. He walked toward the door. He walked fast. Stone Softdale was pulling into the lot as the man reached the door. Grade was behind him. The man pushed through the glass door and walked into a parking lot that now contained 2 motorcycles and 2 large bearded men in leather vests dismounting in the fire lane. He stopped. He looked left. He looked right. He walked toward a silver sedan, nondescript, Pennsylvania plates, the kind of car that disappears in traffic. And he got in and he started the engine. Paver's bike came around the pump island and stopped in the exit lane. Dozer pulled in behind him. Auger came from the other direction. 3 motorcycles blocking the only 2 exits from the Sunoco lot. The silver sedan sat in its parking space with its engine running and its driver gripping the steering wheel and looking through the windshield at a parking lot that had become a cage. If Asphalt Angels has become part of your week, consider joining the channel membership. Just a couple bucks a month keeps these stories coming. Links below. Now, back to the ending. McKean County Sheriffs arrived at 4:53 p.m. 9 minutes after the 911 call. 2 units. The first unit approached the silver sedan from the driver's side. The second unit positioned behind the vehicle. The man in the sedan, his hands on the steering wheel now, placed there deliberately, the way a man places his hands when he knows that the next few minutes will determine the rest of his life, was Dale Edward Kern, 44, of Erie, Pennsylvania. He was not the girl's father. He was not the girl's relative. He was not the girl's neighbor or teacher or coach or family friend. He was not anyone the girl knew before 6 days ago. He was a man in a silver sedan with child locks engaged and a sleeping bag in the back seat, and a plan that had ended at a gas station counter where an 11-year-old girl slid 7 words toward a 58-year-old cashier, and the cashier did the one thing the note asked. She didn't let him. The girl's name was Wren Elliot. She was 11. She'd been taken from a park in Meadville, Crawford County, 60 miles west, while walking home from a friend's house on a Tuesday afternoon. Kern had pulled up beside her on a residential street and said he'd hit a dog on the road 2 blocks back and he needed help. He needed someone small enough to reach under the car and see if the dog was still alive. She'd walked to the car. There was no car with a dog under it. There was Kern's sedan with the passenger door open and a hand on her backpack and the child locks already engaged and the car already moving before she understood what had happened. 6 days. Meadville to Corey the first night, parked in a church lot, sleeping bag in the back seat, Kern in the front. Corey to Warren the second day. Warren to a rest stop on Route 6 the third day. Then south toward Bradford, moving every day, because moving meant not being in one place long enough for someone to notice, not being parked long enough for a license plate to be recorded, not being anywhere long enough for the geography of a girl's absence to overlap with the geography of a man's presence. She ate fast food purchased at drive-thrus. Kern ordered at the window and handed food to the back seat and never took her inside. She used gas station bathrooms when he let her, which was rarely, and when he did, he stood outside the door and counted to 60, and if she wasn't out by 60, he opened the door. She had not spoken to another human being in 6 days other than Kern. Until Patsy. Wren had written the note at 3:55 p.m., 45 minutes before she handed it to Patsy. She'd written it in the back seat of the sedan, while Kern was on his phone in the driver's seat, using a pen from her pencil case and a page torn from the notebook in her backpack. The backpack she'd had with her when she was taken, because she was walking home from a friend's house, and her backpack had her homework in it, and her pencil case and the tools of a school day that became the tools of her rescue. She'd folded the note and held it in her right fist and waited. When Kern pulled into the Sunoco and said, "Go get yourself a snack," she walked inside with the note and the plan, and the 7 words she'd chosen because they were specific and clear and impossible to misunderstand. Don't let him take me back to the car. Not, help me. Not, call the police. Not, I've been kidnapped. 7 words that told the cashier exactly what to do. Don't let him, and exactly what the threat was. Take me back to the car. The verb was let. The instruction was permission. She wasn't asking to be saved. She was asking the cashier to not allow the thing that was about to happen. She was giving the cashier the power to say no on her behalf, because she had been unable to say no on her own for 6 days. Wren's mother, Janine Elliot, was in Meadville. From Emily's house was 12 minutes and 30 seconds, and wasn't, when the walk from Emily's house was 12 minutes and 30 minutes had passed, and Wren didn't have a phone because Janine had been planning to get her one for Christmas, had been pricing plans, had been comparing cases, had been doing the ordinary math of modern parenting, while the clock that mattered, the clock that measured the distance between her daughter walking down a residential street and her daughter disappearing from it, was running, and she didn't know it. She had not slept in 6 days. She had driven the streets of Meadville at 3 a.m. She had stood in the park where Wren was last seen and held a photograph and asked strangers if they'd seen her daughter, and the strangers had looked at the photograph and shaken their heads, and the shaking of heads had become the rhythm of her days. Show the photo, watch the head shake, move to the next stranger, repeat, the mechanical grief of searching for a person who isn't where people are. She flew to Bradford. She arrived at the McKean County Sheriff's Station at 10 p.m. Wren was in an interview room with a female victim's advocate and a blanket and a cup of hot chocolate that Patsy had driven over from the Sunoco because Patsy had decided that she was part of this story now, and the part she was playing required hot chocolate, and she was going to play it fully. Janine walked in. Wren looked up. The notebook was on the table. The same notebook, open to the page where the note had been torn out, the torn edge visible, the ragged margin where 7 words had been separated from the rest of the pages. Mom. Baby. I wrote a note, and I gave it to the lady at the counter, and she read it, and she didn't let him. She didn't let him take me back to the car. Janine crossed the room in 2 steps, and she pulled Wren against her chest and held her with both arms, and her hands gripped the back of Wren's pink jacket, and her fingers dug into the fabric, the way fingers dig into something you've been reaching for in the dark for 6 days, and have finally touched and will not release. Wren pressed her face into her mother's shoulder, and she didn't cry. She breathed, deep and slow, the breathing of a person who has been holding their breath for 6 days and has finally found air. Kern was charged with kidnapping, unlawful restraint, custodial interference, and 6 additional counts that accumulated as the investigation continued. His vehicle contained child locks engaged on both rear doors, a sleeping bag in the back seat, fast food wrappers from 6 days of drive-thrus across 4 counties, and a notebook, his notebook, not Wren's, with handwritten notes on the daily routines of 3 other children in 3 other towns. Wren was not his first attempt. She was his first success. She was also his last. The Northern Tier MC of McKean County, Pennsylvania, now sponsors a program called Counternote. In partnership with gas stations, convenience stores, and truck stops across McKean, Potter, and Elk counties, they train cashiers in a simple protocol. If a child passes you a note, read it. If the note says anything about not leaving, not going back, or not being taken, act. Lock them in the bathroom. Call 911. Stall the adult. Every store in the program keeps a laminated card behind the register with the protocol and the Northern Tier MC phone number. And every store has a small decal on the counter, an excavator bucket with a mountain ridge. And underneath it, if you need help, write it down. We'll read it. Wren Elliot is 12 now. She lives with her mother in Meadville. She walks to school. She walks home. She carries the same backpack with the same pencil case and a new notebook because the old notebook is in evidence. She told her therapist, "I wrote 7 words, that's all, 7 words on a piece of paper." And the lady behind the counter read them, and she believed me. She didn't ask questions. She didn't look confused. She read the note, and she sent me to the bathroom, and she locked me in, and she stood between me and him, and that was it. 7 words. Grady still stops at the Sunoco on Route 220. Patsy still works the counter. The card reader at Pump 6 still doesn't work. The bathroom key is still on a wooden paddle. And behind the register, under the cigarette display, there's a framed piece of notebook paper, blue lines, red margin, 7 words in careful handwriting, torn from a page that saved a girl's life. Patsy framed it herself. She didn't ask permission. She didn't ask the station owner. She bought a frame at the dollar store across from the Sunoco, a $5 black frame with glass, and she put the note inside it, and she hung it on the wall, and she told the station owner, "This stays. This is what this counter is for. This is what every counter in every gas station in America is for. Be the one who reads the note. Thank you for watching this story. If it reminded you that 7 words on a piece of paper can be louder than a scream, please share it. Subscribe to Asphalt Angels for more stories proving that sometimes rescue isn't muscle or speed. It's a cashier who reads a note and does exactly what it says. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done behind that counter?